Hi, I'm Naima Latif, and welcome to Pandemic Farms. This is part one, and we're excited to bring you some knowledge that can actually help you to grow your own food. This is a critical time for us in our development as we look at our urban communities and see that too often we are depending on other people to feed us because we're living on concrete. And the ground that we have is too often wasted. So we want you to take a look at plants that are growing out of the ground without any help from human hands. They just grow naturally. We call them native plants. We don't call them weeds because the word weed simply indicates that we don't know the plant's purpose, and so we kill it. But what each plant does, it does something that is beneficial to our lives. Right here, we're going to share with you the burdock plant. Now, this is a plant that you're going to see growing all over North America and many other places. And right now, it's growing in many places without any kind of assistance. It's growing wild. It's growing because it's a plant that actually helps to nourish the soil. And so rather than us looking at this as something that needs to die, we need to see it as something that promotes life. And we need to help it to promote life by giving it the care that it needs as opposed to throwing pesticides all over it. So, if we're wise, we're going to learn what a plant like this actually does. Now, right now, as people get ready to grow their lawns, they're going to see a number of plants that they don't want because they're not blades of grass. But these are plants that are nutritional and even often medicinal. So let's take a look at some of the other plants that are all around what will eventually be a lawn. And you see dandelions. You see dandelions growing without any assistance. They grow wild, and these are often, unfortunately, killed because we don't know any better. We simply don't know any better. So, what we do is put pesticide all over the plants and these beautiful yellow flowers. For those who are aware, are able to help us in many ways if we would only learn their purpose. So, for those who were with us a few years ago when we launched the Pandemic Farms program, you know that pandemic stands for producing agricultural nourishment, developing economies, making independent communities. There's no reason why we should have food deserts. There's no reason why we should be panicking if it looks like the stores are going to close when we have food that's growing right in our midst. And if we're willing to learn a little bit, we can actually get rid of the dependency syndrome that we have, and thinking that if it's not packaged or in a plastic wrap or a cardboard box or a can, that it's not food, when in fact, all that we need is growing out of the ground. And today, you can actually learn what these plants are and what their uses are. There are apps on the phone that can help you to learn what a plant is so that you can actually be prepared to reap the benefits of a dandelion. There are people who sell dandelion tea, and you can use this plant. You can use the flower, this beautiful yellow flower, and you can use the leaves. So, first, let's take a look at what's growing here in the ground, and we're going to plant some crops. But first, let's take a look at what's here. Now, you can actually download an app on your phone called Picture This, and it will give you the information on what the plant is. And see, you've got a butterfly. That's a good sign. Butterflies in your yard are always a good sign, and butterflies are not going to come around plants that have been poisoned because it would kill them as well. So when you create death for one species, you create death for a number of species. So we don't want you to create death, we want you to create life. But you can see with a close look. Now these are the leaves of the dandelion plant, and we'll talk to you about dandelion leaves and greens that you can make from dandelions. And we'll talk to you about the tea that you can make from the dandelion flower. But here is a plant that's got big leaves. It almost looks like they are collard green leaves. And many people are unaware that this is a plant that is widely used medicinally in other parts of the world. And you can go to the health food store and you can find this plant and its roots, burdock root. So, what we're doing today, we're going to prepare the ground, and that's a process of breaking up the soil. And what you do in breaking up the soil is you're going to turn it over. So, if you've got a backyard, we want you to, first of all, see what's growing and do not put anything under the spray of a pesticide. But first, what you want to do is perhaps harvest some of those plants that can be edible. And we're going to talk to you about something that we made, Burdock burgers. Now, the thing about the has many uses, from the roots to the leaves. But you can only appreciate that if you take the time to actually go online and find out what people use burdock for. Because burdock is, in fact, something that is used for a lot of the ailments that we find. So we want you to, first of all, be able to recognize it, look at the leaves, see how they're shaped, and look at the pattern. Leaves are just like human beings with fingerprints. There's a pattern that makes it possible to identify what they are. And when you can identify them, you can recognize them, and then you can use them. So, the first thing you want to do is to be able to recognize. Now, once you see it on site, you can also use that app, which it's a little camera. You can go to the App Store and download it. It's called Picture This. And this is an app that actually helps you to identify what a plant is. So before we break up the soil, we're actually going to cut some of these, because these are plants that are edible. So rather than seeing this as something to kill, see it as something to eat. And we'll take you through this process of washing the plants and then preparing them for your consumption. This is something you want to do in your yard. And even if you're growing, whether it's a vegetable garden or whatever the case may be, before you just grab a tool and start digging, look at what may be growing there that could actually be edible, and remove it. And we're going to put this in a basket. We're going to gather these leaves, put them in a basket, and prepare them. But before we do that, we want to identify where they are. And of course, we're cutting them right at the base. And one of the things that you can do when you see plants that you can eat, it's always good to get them freshly grown. And you're going to see a lot of freshly grown burdock plants because we've had some rains lately. And rain will always give you some plants that grow up nice and sturdy. And so what you want to be able to do is to get the new plants that are growing fresh out of the ground. And what you want to be able to do is get these young, fresh plants before they get too large, because sometimes larger leaves can be rather bitter. So old burdock leaves, they may have a bit of a bitter taste. The young ones, of course, even though burdock has a very distinct taste, it's not going to be as bitter. So you want to do that. Now, also, we're going to take a look at the dandelions. And before we prepare dandelion tea, we're going to cut off some of the dandelion flowers. So rather than just eliminate things or haphazardly just dig through the ground, you can salvage the things that you're going to actually use to eat. So just think about a yard full of dandelion tea. And we're going to even help you recognize when you have a number of plants that are growing that could be a source of nourishment, a means of making tea that you can use. And one of the things that we're sharing with you every Monday at 11 o'clock is how to recognize what you already have and how to utilize what you already have. It's not a difficult thing if you simply go online and download the app. Picture this. And it's an easy app to find. And if you're willing to take the time to simply point the camera at a plant, you can discover what it is. You can discover what's growing in your yard that is edible. And if you are willing to simply find out what each plant is as you take a closer look, you'll be able to recognize when you have certain leaves. You'll be able to recognize clover. You'll be able to recognize burdock. You'll be able to recognize many of the common plants that grow in a lawn. And you'll be able to look up what it is that they're commonly used for. So we want you to download Picture This. Go to the App Store, because this is what we're going to be using throughout this time, identifying plants that we need to know about. So once you've identified the plant, then we want you to go online and just simply go and ask, is this plant edible? So is burdock edible? Is burdock edible? And you'll be able to discover all the recorded research about this plant so that you can make a decision on what you want to do. Now, If you are unsure as to whether or not the plant you're looking at is in fact burdock, then that's when you're going to need your app on your phone. Picture this: you simply point it and scan with your camera. Your matter of fact, your camera will scan it and will give you the information. So let's take a moment and consider what it is you want to do with your yard. You can be a part of pandemic farms and growing food that not only you eat, but also you may distribute to those who don't have and even sell. We've done that as well. So decide what portion of your yard that you want. Decide what portion of your yard that you want to create a place where you can grow food. And when you section it off, then begin the process of preparing the ground. Now, it's often good to prepare the ground after a rain, but it's also good to prepare the ground and break it up when it's dry. And what you want to do is turn over the soil. And turning over the soil will then stir up the soil. And you'll get a chance to see if it's healthy underneath. So we'll be right back in just a moment with some insight on how you can discover what is in your yard so that you can begin the process of preparing the soil. Hi, I'm Naima Latif, and if you're watching this, that means you're one of Hi, I'm Naima Latif, and if you're watching this, that means you're one of the 4.6 billion people from around the world who are using an electronic device to talk to people. In these times, people are using the internet to talk to everybody. Friends, neighbors, family members, co-workers. People are on their cell phones and computers all day long. Now, if you're in business, that is great news. That means you can sell your products and services all day long and never have to leave your home. All you need is a media connection, somebody to connect you to an audience. And that's why I'm talking to you today. We produce programs, and our audience members are people who shop. They buy clothes, food, beauty supplies, cleaning supplies, home repair, transportation services, childcare services. Whatever you're selling, they need to buy it. We're your media connection. Just follow this link, and tomorrow you can sit back and relax at home while your business is making you money. And that's what we want you to be able to do. We want you to be able to make money off of what you have growing in your yard. So now take a look at this. Because you can grow anything. We want you to take a look at the many uses of burdock. Is burdock edible? Everything you need to know is right online. So simply look it up. Is burdock edible? Absolutely. So take a look at what you see here. And you can see that the roots are edible raw or cooked, or often peeled and sliced, and they can be roasted as a coffee substitute. Leaves and leaf stems, edible raw or cooked, used as a pot herb. Young stems, after peeling away the outer husk, the pit can be used as a vegetable. Are burdock leaves edible? Harvest in preparation for edible and medicinal purposes, greater burdock is considered the best species, followed by common burdock. And there are several edible parts: leaf, stem, flower, stalk, and root. So, what do you do with a plant that is growing in your yard? You research it and then you eat it. So, take a look now. Take a look at all of the parts that can be used. And you can decide how you're going to use this plant. You can use every part of this plant. So now that you know, we want you for next week to go looking for burdock. We want you to go and find burdock. And we want you to pick the burdock. We want you to take advantage of what's in your yard so that you can at some point make a decision of what you want to do with the ground that you have. You want to be able to use the ground that you have as a way for you to. We want you to be able to recognize what's growing in your own yard. So look at this as a homework assignment. What you're going to do is, first of all, download that app, picture this. And once you've done that, we want you to go through your yard and start identifying everything that's growing in your yard. That's the first step. It's a basic thing that you can do. It's a plant identifier app. And if you simply download it, then you'll be able to identify everything that's growing in your yard. And you'll be able to simply point at a plant and it will show you exactly what it is. And it'll show you, it looks like this. It's a little flower, a little green flower. You download this, go to the App Store and download this. And that will give you what you need to be able to identify a plant. That's what you want to be able to do, to identify the plants that are in your yard. So here you are. We want you to be able to download this app, and then you'll be able to identify everything that's growing in your yard. And you'll also be able to decide how you're going to arrange your yard so that you can best grow your own food. So now we're going to take these burdock leaves and we're going to rinse them off. And next week, we're going to show you all about how to make burdock burgers. And we're also going to make some dandelion tea. So this is the first step, to find the app, picture this, and to identify these plants that are in your yard. Just start with these two dandelions. Of course, you'll see the dandelion pointy leaves, but first we're going to just look for them. And then we're going to go about the process of picking them so that we can actually make a dish. And once we do that, then we'll turn over the soil and start the process of planting. But first, before you plant, know what's already growing in your yard. And this is how you can learn how to grow your own food. Join us next Monday, 11 o'clock, and see these burdock plants turned into a delicious meal. We want you to look for burdock, dandelions, and other food that's grown right in your yard. So here we are. We want you to be able to download Picture This so that you will be able to identify all of the things growing in your yard. First thing you do, download the app, Picture This. Designate an area of your yard where you want to grow food. And then identify all of the existing plants and go online to discover their use. And then harvest them. Wash and clean them, soak them. Maybe want to put them in the freezer, put them in freezer bags. And next week, we're going to introduce you to a recipe so that you can actually make food out of what's growing in your yard, even before you begin the process of planting. So we invite you to grow your own food. Join us next week for part 2 of Pandemic Farms, where we share with you the recipe for burdock burgers and dandelion tea. And we show you the best way of how to turn over your soil. We want you to be proficient in something as basic as feeding yourself. You can do this. You can do this because it's something that's been done for centuries, even if you're in an urban environment. First step, get the app. Picture This, and then you will be ready to identify and grow your own food. We'll see you next week.